What if everything you've been taught about hackers is wrong? When you hear the word hacker, you probably picture someone sitting in a dark room, surrounded by glowing computer screens, wearing a hoodie, trying to break into bank accounts or steal confidential information. Movies have reinforced this image for decades, making hacking seem like a dangerous activity practiced only by cybercriminals. But what if the world's greatest innovators were hackers too? What if the same mindset that allows someone to break into a computer system is also the mindset that built Facebook, transformed global businesses, revolutionized healthcare, and solved problems that experts believed were impossible? The truth is that hacking has very little to do with crime. Real hacking is a way of thinking. It is the ability to challenge assumptions, question the obvious, experiment relentlessly, and discover solutions where everyone else sees dead ends. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs, inventors, scientists, and business leaders in history didn't become successful because they followed the rules. They became successful because they learned how to rethink them. In today's summary, Knowledge Power explores one of the most fascinating books about innovation, creativity, and problem-solving ever written. By the end of this video, you'll discover why hackers often outperform traditional thinkers, why experimentation beats perfect planning, and how you can apply the hacker mindset to your career, your business, and your everyday life, without writing a single line of malicious code. Because the greatest hackers don't steal opportunities. They create them. Let's begin. Imagine two people standing in front of the same locked door. The first person looks at the door, notices the lock, and immediately concludes that entering is impossible. They turn around and walk away. The second person looks at the exact same door. Instead of seeing a barrier, they see a puzzle. They begin asking questions. Is there another entrance? Can the lock be opened differently? Can the problem itself be redesigned? Can I build something better than what's behind this door? That simple difference in thinking separates ordinary problem solvers from extraordinary innovators. According to this book, hacking is not primarily about computers. It is about refusing to accept unnecessary limitations. It is about believing that almost every obstacle can be understood, improved, redesigned, or overcome. This mindset has produced revolutionary companies, breakthrough medical discoveries, innovative technologies, and billion-dollar businesses. Unfortunately, the word hacker has been misunderstood. News headlines often focus on cyber attacks, ransomware, identity theft, and data breaches. Those crimes certainly exist. But the authors explain that criminals who exploit technology for personal gain are more accurately called crackers. True hackers are something entirely different. They use curiosity instead of destruction, innovation instead of exploitation, creation instead of theft. Their goal is not to damage systems. Their goal is to understand them deeply enough to improve them. And that's exactly what this book teaches. The first lesson in this book may be its most important. Not everyone who breaks into a computer is a hacker. Many people use the terms hacker and criminal interchangeably. The authors argue that this misunderstanding has hidden one of the most valuable ways of thinking in the modern world. Imagine a skilled mechanic taking apart a car engine. One person dismantles it to steal valuable parts. Another dismantles it to understand how it works so they can make it faster, safer, and more efficient. Both perform similar actions. Their intentions couldn't be more different. Technology follows the same principle. A criminal uses technical knowledge to exploit weaknesses for money, power, or disruption. A hacker studies weaknesses to improve systems, create new ideas, or solve difficult problems. That distinction changes everything. Throughout history, some of the greatest breakthroughs have come from people willing to question existing systems. They challenged accepted ideas. They experimented. They failed repeatedly. Eventually, they discovered better solutions. The authors point to companies that openly embrace hacking as part of their culture. One of the most famous examples is Facebook. Rather than avoiding the word hacker, the company proudly embraced it. Its headquarters was even given the address One Hacker Way. Why? Because inside Facebook, hacking didn't mean breaking laws. It meant building quickly, testing ideas, improving continuously. never assuming the first solution was the best solution. The company encouraged engineers to create prototypes rapidly instead of spending months discussing theoretical plans. Many of Facebook's biggest innovations emerged because employees were encouraged to experiment first and perfect later. That philosophy helped transform a college networking website into one of the largest technology companies in history. The lesson extends far beyond Silicon Valley. Whether you're starting a business, managing a team, learning a new skill, or trying to improve your personal life, the hacker mindset encourages one simple belief: there is almost always a better way. The challenge is being curious enough to find it. Most people stop when they encounter their first obstacle. Hackers begin. One of the book's core beliefs is beautifully simple. Every barrier can be penetrated. This doesn't mean every challenge is easy. It means every challenge can be approached differently. Imagine scientists trying to eliminate malaria, a disease responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths every year. For decades, researchers relied on familiar methods: medicines, mosquito nets, chemical sprays. Each solution helped. None completely solved the problem. Then innovators began asking an unusual question. Instead of fighting mosquitoes after they spread disease, what if we could stop them before they ever reproduced? This idea eventually inspired experiments using laser technology capable of identifying and eliminating male mosquitoes without harming other insects. At first, the concept sounded almost impossible. Many experiments failed. New obstacles appeared constantly. But failure wasn't interpreted as proof that the idea was impossible. Failure simply provided more information. Each unsuccessful attempt revealed another piece of the puzzle. Eventually, those experiments produced entirely new possibilities. This story perfectly illustrates the hacker mindset. Traditional thinkers often ask, "Can this be done?" Hackers ask, "How many different ways can we try?" That difference is enormous. Imagine Thomas Edison abandoning the light bulb after his first failed experiment. Imagine the Wright brothers giving up after their first unsuccessful flight. Imagine modern entrepreneurs quitting after their first rejected business proposal. History would look completely different. The book reminds us that almost every breakthrough appears impossible until someone refuses to stop experimenting. Progress rarely arrives through certainty. It arrives through persistence. Every unsuccessful attempt teaches something valuable. Every experiment removes another wrong answer. Every obstacle forces better questions. The people who eventually succeed are rarely those who avoid failure. They are the ones who refuse to let failure become the final answer. Imagine preparing for a journey across unknown territory. One traveler insists on creating an incredibly detailed map before taking the first step. They want every road labeled, every obstacle predicted, every challenge planned in advance. The second traveler carries only a compass. They know their destination. They understand the general direction. But they also expect unexpected obstacles. If the road changes, they'll adapt. If a bridge collapses, they'll find another route. If a better opportunity appears, they'll explore it. According to this book, hackers always choose the compass. The authors explain that detailed plans often become outdated the moment reality changes. Markets shift. Technology evolves. Customers change their minds. Competitors introduce unexpected products. Artificial intelligence transforms industries almost overnight. In a world changing this quickly, rigid plans become fragile. Hackers therefore focus less on predicting every step and more on developing the ability to adapt. This is exactly how many successful startups operate. They launch simple versions of products. Listen to customer feedback. Improve continuously. Sometimes they completely redesign their original idea. Instead of treating change as failure, they treat it as learning. The destination remains clear. The path remains flexible. This mindset also applies to careers. Many professionals spend years creating perfect career plans. Then new technologies appear. Entire industries evolve. Unexpected opportunities emerge. The people who adapt often outperform those who stubbornly follow outdated plans. A compass provides direction. Curiosity discovers the path. Together, they create progress. By now, one truth has become impossible to ignore. Hackers don't succeed because they possess secret knowledge. They succeed because they think differently. They question assumptions. They embrace experimentation. They view obstacles as puzzles instead of permanent barriers. But these ideas represent only the beginning. The book introduces 5 powerful hacker mindsets that have shaped some of the world's most successful innovators, and each one offers practical lessons you can apply immediately. Imagine owning the most successful business in your industry. Your products dominate the market. Customers love your brand. Competitors struggle to catch up. Profits continue growing year after year. Most people would celebrate. Hackers become nervous. Why? Because today's success often creates tomorrow's complacency. One of the most powerful ideas in this book is that nothing remains unchanged forever. Markets evolve. Technology advances. Customer expectations shift. What feels revolutionary today may become ordinary within months. Hackers understand this reality better than almost anyone. They never assume success is permanent. Instead, they ask a question that many companies avoid. If we were starting this business today, how would we build it differently? History offers countless examples of organizations that ignored this question. The book highlights the story of Schwinn, once the dominant name in the bicycle industry. For decades, Schwinn represented quality and innovation. The company continuously improved its products and earned enormous customer loyalty. But eventually, something changed. Instead of focusing on innovation, Schwinn focused on protecting its existing success. It fought competitors, defended market share, resisted change. While Schwinn looked backward, newer companies looked forward. Innovation slowed. Customers discovered better alternatives. The market moved on. A company that once led an industry gradually became a lesson in what happens when success replaces curiosity. The same pattern appeared again and again throughout business history. Blockbuster believed people would always rent movies from physical stores. Netflix imagined streaming. Pan American World Airways once symbolized the future of air travel. Competitors adapted more quickly. Kodak invented digital photography but hesitated to embrace it fully because it threatened its traditional film business. Eventually, others transformed the industry instead. The authors argue that failure rarely arrives overnight. It usually begins the moment organizations stop questioning themselves. Hackers refuse to become comfortable. They constantly examine their own products, their own services, their own ideas. Sometimes they deliberately challenge their own success before competitors have the opportunity. This philosophy applies just as much to individuals. If your career depends entirely on skills you learned 10 years ago, you're becoming vulnerable. Artificial intelligence continues changing workplaces. Cloud computing evolves. Cybersecurity threats become more advanced. Programming languages improve. New industries appear almost every year. Learning cannot stop simply because you've achieved success. The greatest professionals continue reinventing themselves long before necessity forces them to. Because in a rapidly changing world, standing still is often the fastest way to fall behind. Most people spend enormous amounts of time searching for the perfect idea. Hackers search for the next experiment. Imagine 2 entrepreneurs wanting to open a restaurant. The first spends 3 years writing business plans, researching menus, analyzing competitors, perfecting branding, designing logos, calculating every possible risk. The second entrepreneur begins much differently. They volunteer at local restaurants, test recipes with neighbors, operate a small food stand during weekends, experiment with different cuisines, collect customer feedback, adjust recipes, test prices, learn continuously. Which entrepreneur gains more real-world knowledge? Almost always the second. This illustrates another foundational hacker belief. Quantity is a force multiplier. Hackers understand that each experiment produces valuable information. Most experiments fail. Some produce average results. A few reveal extraordinary opportunities. Nobody knows which attempt will become the breakthrough. The only reliable strategy is to keep experimenting. The authors describe this mindset as replacing perfection with momentum. Perfection often creates paralysis. People delay launching businesses because websites aren't perfect. They postpone writing books because every sentence feels incomplete. They avoid public speaking until they believe they'll never make mistakes. Unfortunately, perfect readiness rarely arrives. Hackers choose action instead. They build, measure, learn, improve, repeat. The process resembles scientific research. Scientists don't expect every experiment to succeed. If 9 experiments fail but the 10th transforms medicine, the previous failures become part of the success story. Business follows the same principle. Many billion-dollar companies began with ideas completely different from their final products. Amazon originally sold books. YouTube started as a video dating website. Instagram began as a complicated location-sharing application before focusing almost entirely on photo sharing. None of these companies discovered their greatest opportunities through endless planning. They discovered them through continuous experimentation. The lesson extends into everyday life. Want to become a better writer? Write more. Want to improve public speaking? Speak more often. Want to build confidence? Practice more. Want to become a stronger leader? Lead more frequently. Progress is usually the result of repeated attempts rather than perfect preparation. Every attempt teaches something. Every lesson improves the next attempt. Eventually, consistent experimentation produces results that perfection never could. Imagine entering a room where nobody knows your age, your university, your job title, your nationality, your appearance, your social status. Nobody knows whether you've worked for the company for 20 years or joined yesterday. The only thing everyone can evaluate is the quality of your ideas. For hackers, this represents the ideal environment. One of the book's most refreshing principles is remarkably simple. Competence matters more than credentials. Throughout history, society has often judged people according to titles, degrees, years of experience, office size, corporate hierarchy. Hackers care about something much more practical. Can you solve the problem? If the answer is yes, your background becomes far less important. The authors introduce the remarkable example of Valve, one of the world's most successful video game companies. Unlike traditional organizations filled with managers, departments, and rigid reporting structures, Valve operates in an unusually flexible way. Employees choose many of the projects they want to work on. Teams organize themselves. Performance depends largely on contribution rather than hierarchy. The underlying philosophy is powerful. Great ideas can come from anyone. Innovation shouldn't wait for permission. When organizations encourage people to contribute based on ability rather than title, creativity expands dramatically. This lesson reaches far beyond technology. Consider open-source software. Thousands of programmers around the world voluntarily collaborate on projects. Many contributors have never met. Some are students. Others are experienced engineers. Some work for major corporations. Others contribute during evenings after work. The software doesn't care who wrote the code. It only reflects whether the solution works. The same principle increasingly applies across modern industries. Artificial intelligence rewards people capable of asking better questions. Business rewards people capable of solving customer problems. Leadership rewards people capable of inspiring others. The future belongs less to those with impressive resumes and more to those who consistently create value. Your diploma may open the first door. Your competence determines how many additional doors remain open afterward. When people hear the phrase brute force, they often imagine hackers trying millions of passwords until one finally works. That certainly happens in cybersecurity. But the authors encourage readers to think about brute force much more broadly. At its core, brute force means relentless persistence. Imagine trying to learn a difficult programming language. You write code every day. Most of it doesn't work. You fix one error only to discover another. Hours pass solving problems that seem impossible. Slowly, patterns begin appearing. Concepts become familiar. Confidence grows. Nothing magical happened. Persistence simply accumulated. The same idea appears in entrepreneurship. Successful founders rarely contact only 3 potential customers. They speak with hundreds. Sales professionals don't close every meeting. They continue scheduling more conversations. Authors receive rejection after rejection before finally finding publishers. Athletes repeat identical movements thousands of times before mastering them. The book explains that determination often looks ordinary while you're living through it. People admire successful outcomes. They rarely see the thousands of invisible attempts that created them. Hackers embrace repetition because they understand that each attempt slightly improves probability. Brute force isn't glamorous. It isn't exciting. But combined with learning, it becomes remarkably powerful. Persistence without learning wastes effort. Persistence with continuous improvement changes lives. So far, we've discovered that hackers constantly reinvent themselves, value experimentation over perfection, respect competence more than titles, and understand that persistence often outperforms raw talent. But some of the most fascinating ideas in this book are still ahead. How do hackers convince people to reveal information without touching a computer? Why do they intentionally borrow ideas from completely different industries? And how does breaking something apart often become the fastest path toward building something extraordinary? Imagine spending millions of dollars building the most secure building in the world. Every door uses biometric authentication. Every computer is protected by advanced encryption. Security cameras monitor every hallway. Motion sensors detect unusual activity. Armed guards patrol the perimeter. From the outside, the building appears impossible to penetrate. Now imagine a stranger walking to the front entrance carrying a box of coffee and pastries. An employee smiles politely, opens the secure door, and says, "Come on in." Within seconds, the strongest security system in the building has been defeated. Not because the technology failed. Because a human being made a decision. One of the most fascinating lessons in this book is that hackers often attack people before they attack technology. This technique is called social engineering, and it has very little to do with programming. Instead, it relies on understanding how human beings think, trust, and make decisions. The authors explain that people naturally want to be helpful. We answer questions. We trust familiar names. We respond to urgency. We assume others are acting honestly. Hackers understand these natural tendencies and sometimes manipulate them to gain access to valuable information. One of the most famous hackers in history, Kevin Mitnick, became legendary not because he wrote the world's greatest software, but because he mastered human psychology. He often pretended to be an executive, an IT employee, or a trusted colleague. Instead of breaking passwords through technology, he convinced people to reveal them voluntarily. Think about that for a moment. The weakest point in many security systems isn't the computer. It's the human being sitting in front of it. But the authors also show that this same principle can be used positively. Successful businesses understand human behavior. Great teachers understand human behavior. Outstanding leaders understand human behavior. Excellent salespeople understand human behavior. Innovation becomes much easier when you first understand the people you're trying to help. The lesson reaches far beyond cybersecurity. If you want people to support your ideas, first understand their concerns. If you want customers to buy your product, first understand their problems. If you want to become a better leader, first understand what motivates your team. Technology changes constantly. Human psychology changes much more slowly. Those who understand people will almost always have an advantage over those who understand technology alone. Imagine trying to solve an impossible puzzle completely alone. You work for weeks. You test different ideas. Progress feels painfully slow. Now imagine asking 1,000 intelligent people to help. Suddenly, someone notices a detail you completely overlooked. Another proposes an unusual solution. A third combines several ideas into something entirely new. What once appeared impossible begins looking surprisingly achievable. Hackers understand a powerful truth. Many difficult problems become easier when many minds work together. This principle is known as crowdsourcing, and it has transformed industries around the world. The authors share several remarkable examples. The United States Department of Defense has invited ethical hackers from around the world to search for weaknesses in government systems. At first glance, this sounds dangerous. Why would anyone invite strangers to attack sensitive technology? Because discovering vulnerabilities before criminals find them makes systems dramatically stronger. Thousands of curious minds can often identify problems that internal teams never notice. Another fascinating example is the navigation application Waze. Instead of relying only on professional traffic analysts, Waze allows millions of drivers to contribute information in real time. Every driver becomes another sensor. Road closures, traffic jams, accidents, construction work. Millions of tiny observations combine into one extraordinarily accurate navigation system. No single employee could possibly collect that much information. But together, ordinary people create something extraordinary. This lesson applies to almost every profession. Business leaders can ask employees for ideas instead of assuming executives have all the answers. Teachers can encourage students to solve problems together. Entrepreneurs can gather customer feedback before launching products. Software developers can release early versions to communities willing to test them. The hacker mindset recognizes something traditional organizations sometimes forget. Intelligence is distributed. Great ideas can come from anywhere. Innovation accelerates when people stop protecting ideas and start sharing them. Most people dream about one enormous opportunity changing their lives overnight. Hackers think differently. They search for tiny openings, tiny improvements, tiny weaknesses, tiny possibilities. The book calls this approach the exploit. In cybersecurity, an exploit begins with discovering a very small flaw. Perhaps a single line of vulnerable software. Perhaps an overlooked configuration setting. Perhaps one forgotten password. By itself, the weakness seems insignificant. But once hackers understand it, they gradually expand their access until they control much larger systems. The authors encourage readers to apply this principle ethically in business and everyday life. Imagine a salesperson trying to work with a massive international corporation. Winning every department at once feels impossible. Instead, they begin with one small team. They solve one important problem. People notice the results. Another department becomes interested. Then another. Eventually, one small opportunity grows into a company-wide partnership. Business growth often follows exactly this pattern. The world's largest companies rarely began by serving millions of customers. Amazon started with books. Netflix mailed DVDs. Facebook served one university. Google organized internet search. Every giant organization once solved one relatively small problem exceptionally well. The hacker mindset teaches us to stop waiting for gigantic opportunities. Instead, master the opportunity directly in front of you. Small victories create momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates larger opportunities. Eventually, what once seemed impossible becomes reality. Imagine asking a chef to improve the customer experience in a hospital. Or asking an airline pilot to redesign a classroom. Or asking a video game designer to improve employee training. At first, these combinations sound unusual. But according to this book, they represent one of the most effective forms of innovation. Hackers constantly borrow ideas from completely different industries. They recognize that many solutions already exist. They're simply hidden somewhere else. The authors explain that some criminals learn sophisticated hacking techniques after watching movies. While those examples were illegal, the underlying principle remains valuable. People naturally copy successful ideas. The real question is whether they use those ideas responsibly. Think about modern smartphones. Today's devices combine cameras, GPS systems, music players, televisions, calculators, payment systems, health monitors, notebooks, and communication tools. None of these ideas originated together. Someone simply imagined combining them into one product. Restaurants borrow loyalty programs from airlines. Streaming platforms borrow recommendation systems from online retailers. Healthcare organizations borrow efficiency principles from manufacturing. Artificial intelligence now learns from multiple disciplines simultaneously. The lesson becomes obvious. Innovation rarely requires inventing everything from scratch. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough comes from asking, who has already solved a similar problem in a completely different industry? The authors encourage readers to become students of everything. Read widely. Explore unfamiliar subjects. Study successful businesses outside your profession. Attend conferences unrelated to your daily work. Curiosity creates unexpected connections. Those connections often become tomorrow's innovations. Have you ever wondered how children learn? Give a child a new toy. Within minutes, they begin pressing buttons, turning pieces, opening compartments. Sometimes they accidentally break it. They're not trying to destroy it. They're trying to understand it. Hackers never lose this curiosity. One of their favorite techniques is called deconstruction. Instead of accepting products exactly as they appear, hackers dismantle them mentally, or physically, to understand every component. How does it work? Why was it designed this way? What assumptions guided its creation? Can those assumptions be challenged? The authors explain that countless innovations emerged because someone first took an existing system apart. Scientists studying coffee eventually discovered methods for removing caffeine without completely changing flavor. That breakthrough created an entirely new global market for decaffeinated beverages. Engineers studying payment cards carefully analyzed every layer of hardware and software to understand both strengths and weaknesses. Product designers frequently dismantle competing products to discover how they function. This isn't copying. It's learning. The same approach works beautifully in everyday life. If your business struggles with customer service, break the entire customer journey into individual steps. If meetings waste time, analyze every stage of the meeting. If your study habits aren't effective, examine exactly how you learn. Improvement begins with understanding. Understanding begins with curiosity. Curiosity begins by asking better questions. Hackers don't accept complexity as permanent. They simplify it, piece by piece, until solutions become obvious. By now, it's becoming clear that hacking isn't about breaking computers. It's about breaking limitations. Hackers understand people. They harness collective intelligence. They turn tiny opportunities into major breakthroughs. They borrow ideas fearlessly. And they improve systems by first understanding how those systems truly work. But the hacker's toolbox is even more surprising than we've seen so far. What happens when extreme time pressure actually increases creativity? Why do hackers sometimes reverse the obvious solution instead of following it? And how have unexpected combinations of completely unrelated ideas produced billion-dollar products and even changed world history? Imagine you're standing in front of a maze. Most people begin at the entrance and slowly search for the exit. Now imagine beginning at the exit instead. Instead of asking, how do I get through this maze? You ask, if I were already at the destination, what path would lead me back? Suddenly, a problem that once seemed confusing becomes surprisingly clear. This is one of the most valuable thinking techniques discussed in the book. Hackers frequently solve problems by reversing them. Instead of asking how to build something, they ask how it could be broken. Instead of asking how to become successful, they ask what guarantees failure. Instead of asking how to improve customer experience, they ask what would completely frustrate customers. This simple change in perspective often reveals solutions that remain invisible when thinking in conventional ways. Consider cybersecurity. Traditional software developers build systems they believe are secure. Hackers intentionally search for every possible weakness. They assume mistakes exist. They expect vulnerabilities. By thinking like an attacker before a real attacker arrives, organizations strengthen their defenses dramatically. The same principle works in business. Suppose you're launching an online store. Instead of asking only how to increase sales, ask yourself a different question. What would make customers leave my website within 10 seconds? Slow loading pages. Complicated checkout forms. Hidden costs. Poor customer support. Confusing product descriptions. Once you identify these problems, improving the business becomes much easier. The authors explain that many world-class companies routinely conduct exercises in which employees deliberately attempt to break their own systems. Some technology firms even create dedicated teams whose only responsibility is finding weaknesses before customers discover them. This approach may seem negative at first. In reality, it is one of the most optimistic forms of thinking. It assumes every problem can be identified before it becomes a disaster. It replaces fear with preparation. And preparation almost always creates confidence. The hacker mindset teaches us that looking at problems from the opposite direction is not pessimism. It is wisdom. Sometimes the answer isn't hidden in the question you've been asking. It's hidden in the question you've been avoiding. Imagine two companies receiving exactly the same innovative idea on the same day. The first company spends 18 months discussing it. Committees are formed. Meetings are scheduled. Reports are written. Risk assessments continue. Approvals move from one department to another. Eventually, the product reaches customers. The second company builds a simple prototype within 2 weeks. Customers begin testing it immediately. Feedback arrives. Problems are fixed. New features are added. The product improves continuously. By the time the first company finally launches its carefully planned solution, the second company has already released several improved versions. Who wins? According to the authors, speed almost always beats perfection. Hackers understand something many organizations forget. Knowledge comes from action, not speculation. Every day spent debating an idea without testing it is a day without learning. This philosophy became one of the driving forces behind Silicon Valley. Companies adopted phrases like fail fast and move quickly not because they enjoyed making mistakes, but because early mistakes are inexpensive. Finding a problem after building a prototype is manageable. Finding the same problem after investing millions of dollars is devastating. The authors emphasize that moving quickly does not mean becoming careless. It means shortening the distance between thinking and learning. The faster you test an idea, the faster reality teaches you whether it works. This lesson applies to careers as well. Many professionals spend years waiting for the perfect opportunity before learning a new skill. Hackers begin learning immediately. Want to understand artificial intelligence? Build something small. Interested in cybersecurity? Create a virtual lab. Curious about entrepreneurship? Launch a tiny side project. Action creates experience. Experience creates confidence. Confidence creates opportunities. Speed is not about rushing. It is about reducing unnecessary waiting. Because while you're waiting for certainty, someone else is already learning. Many people believe creativity belongs only to artists, musicians, or inventors. The authors strongly disagree. They argue that creativity is simply the ability to connect ideas in new ways. That means anyone can become more creative. Imagine a chef preparing dinner. They combine ingredients that have existed for centuries. Yet every year, thousands of completely new recipes appear. Nothing magical happened. The chef simply created a new combination. Technology works exactly the same way. The smartphone combined a camera, a telephone, a computer, a GPS device, a calculator, a music player, and internet access. Streaming platforms combine television with the internet. Ride-sharing applications combine smartphones with transportation. Artificial intelligence combines enormous datasets with increasingly sophisticated algorithms. Innovation often looks revolutionary from the outside. But internally, it frequently begins by connecting ideas that already exist. Hackers constantly collect knowledge from different fields because they understand this principle. They read books outside their profession, study psychology, explore biology, learn economics, understand design, research history. Each subject adds another tool to their mental toolbox. Eventually, two unrelated ideas suddenly connect. That unexpected connection becomes innovation. The authors encourage readers to stop asking, "Am I creative?" Instead ask, "What experiences can I combine that nobody else has connected yet?" Every person has a unique collection of knowledge. Your career, your hobbies, your education, your challenges, your interests. Together, these experiences create combinations no one else possesses. Creativity is not about waiting for inspiration. It is about collecting enough ideas that inspiration eventually becomes inevitable. Imagine interviewing two candidates for the same job. The first confidently claims to know every answer. The second admits they don't know everything, but eagerly explains how they would find the answer. Which candidate is more likely to succeed 5 years from now? The book argues that curiosity almost always outperforms certainty. Technology changes too quickly for anyone to know everything. Programming languages evolve. Artificial intelligence advances. Cybersecurity threats multiply. Cloud platforms expand. What matters is not memorizing every answer. What matters is maintaining the ability to learn continuously. Hackers ask questions relentlessly. Why does this work? Could it work differently? Who designed this system? What assumptions were made? What happens if those assumptions are wrong? Children naturally ask hundreds of questions every day. Unfortunately, many adults gradually stop. We become afraid of appearing uninformed. We hesitate to challenge accepted ideas. Hackers never lose that childlike curiosity. They understand that every major discovery begins with a simple question. History supports this idea repeatedly. Isaac Newton wondered why an apple fell toward the ground. The Wright brothers questioned whether humans could fly. Tim Berners-Lee imagined connecting information across computers. Steve Jobs wondered whether technology could become beautifully simple. None of these breakthroughs began with certainty. They began with curiosity. The authors remind us that questions create progress. Answers merely describe where we've already been. If you want to stay relevant in a rapidly changing world, protect your curiosity at all costs. Because knowledge has an expiration date. Curiosity does not. As we've progressed through this book, one pattern has become impossible to ignore. Every successful hacker shares one common characteristic. They refuse to accept limitations without first investigating them. When someone says something cannot be done, hackers ask why. When systems appear complicated, hackers simplify them. When obstacles appear permanent, hackers search for hidden opportunities. The technology itself is only a tool. The true advantage lies in the way hackers think. The authors explain that this mindset can be applied almost anywhere. Teachers can redesign education. Doctors can improve healthcare. Engineers can transform industries. Business owners can reinvent customer experiences. Parents can discover better ways of raising children. Students can develop faster methods of learning. The hacker mindset is universal because every part of life contains systems waiting to be improved. Some systems are digital. Others are human. Others are organizational. Others exist only inside our own thinking. The greatest breakthroughs often begin the moment someone asks one courageous question. What if everyone is approaching this the wrong way? That single question has launched companies, changed governments, advanced science, saved lives, and transformed entire industries. Perhaps it could transform yours as well. We've now explored the core principles that define the hacker mindset: thinking in reverse, acting quickly, embracing creativity, staying endlessly curious, and challenging assumptions instead of accepting them. But one final question remains. How can ordinary people apply these ideas in everyday life without becoming entrepreneurs, programmers, or cybersecurity experts? And what is the single lesson that connects every story, every example, and every principle in this remarkable book? Think about the people who create the greatest impact in any organization. They're not always the smartest. They're not always the most experienced. They're not always the ones with the most impressive degrees. More often than not, they're the people who willingly tackle problems everyone else ignores. When a project begins falling apart, they don't complain. They investigate. When a customer faces an unexpected challenge, they don't blame the system. They search for solutions. When new technology disrupts an industry, they don't fear change. They learn it. This, according to the authors, is one of the defining characteristics of the hacker mindset. Hackers don't run away from difficult problems. They move toward them. Because every difficult problem contains hidden opportunities. Imagine joining a company where everyone complains about an outdated process. Employees have accepted it for years. It has always been this way. This is how we do things. This can't be changed. Most people accept these statements without question. Hackers don't. They ask why. Why does this process exist? What purpose did it originally serve? Does that purpose still exist today? If we designed a system from scratch, would we build it the same way? Those simple questions often uncover extraordinary opportunities. History repeatedly rewards people who improve inefficient systems. Someone questioned physical maps and built GPS navigation. Someone questioned renting DVDs and created streaming. Someone questioned carrying cash and built digital payments. Someone questioned traditional classrooms and developed online education. Every breakthrough begins with dissatisfaction. Not destructive dissatisfaction. Constructive dissatisfaction. The willingness to believe that something can always become better. The authors encourage readers to become known for solving problems rather than pointing them out. Anyone can criticize. Anyone can identify flaws. Few people consistently create solutions. Those few become invaluable. Whether you work in IT, finance, education, healthcare, engineering, or business, your long-term value will rarely be determined by how many problems you recognize. It will be determined by how many problems you solve. Throughout this book, we've explored dozens of principles. Question assumptions. Experiment constantly. Move quickly. Learn continuously. Think differently. Collaborate widely. Embrace failure as education. But how can someone actually begin developing this mindset? The authors offer a surprisingly practical answer. Start small. You don't need to invent the next billion-dollar company tomorrow. You simply need to become slightly more curious every day. The next time you encounter an inconvenience, don't immediately accept it. Ask why it exists. The next time you hear someone say, "That's impossible," ask what evidence supports that conclusion. When learning a new skill, don't focus only on memorizing instructions. Understand why those instructions exist. When using a product, imagine how you would redesign it. When reading a book, challenge the author's assumptions instead of accepting every conclusion automatically. The hacker mindset is built through habits. Small habits repeated consistently eventually transform the way you think. One of the most practical exercises suggested by the philosophy of this book is keeping an improvement journal. Every day, write down one system that could be improved. It might be something at work, something at home, something in your community, or even one of your own daily routines. Then brainstorm several different ways it could become simpler, faster, cheaper, or more enjoyable. Most ideas won't become reality. That's perfectly fine. The exercise trains your brain to notice opportunities instead of limitations. Over time, you'll begin seeing possibilities that other people overlook completely. That is exactly how innovators think. Not because they possess extraordinary intelligence, but because they've trained themselves to observe the world differently. If history teaches us anything, It's that change never stops. 100 years ago, very few people imagined smartphones. 20 years ago, artificial intelligence seemed like science fiction to many businesses. Today, AI writes code, generates images, assists doctors, translates languages, and automates countless everyday tasks. Tomorrow's breakthroughs may completely reshape industries that seem stable today. The authors argue that trying to predict every future technology is nearly impossible. Fortunately, you don't need to. Instead of preparing for one specific future, prepare yourself to adapt to any future. That means becoming comfortable with learning, comfortable with uncertainty, comfortable experimenting, comfortable changing your mind when better evidence appears. These qualities remain valuable regardless of how technology evolves. Artificial intelligence may automate many repetitive tasks. But curiosity cannot be automated. Critical thinking cannot be automated. Creativity cannot be automated. Ethical judgment cannot be automated. The ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas into innovative solutions remains one of humanity's greatest strengths. The hacker mindset becomes increasingly valuable in this environment because it focuses less on memorizing information and more on developing flexible thinking. Knowledge changes. Learning how to learn never goes out of date. This may be one of the most important lessons in the entire book. Don't attach your identity to what you currently know. Attach it to your ability to keep learning. Because in a rapidly changing world, adaptability becomes the ultimate competitive advantage. After exploring every principle, every story, and every example, one central message connects them all. The world's greatest innovators don't see reality the way everyone else does. Where most people see rules, they see possibilities. Where others see failure, they see feedback. Where others see limitations, they see design challenges. Where others stop asking questions, they become even more curious. This mindset isn't reserved for programmers or cybersecurity professionals. It's equally valuable for entrepreneurs, students, teachers, engineers, doctors, managers, designers, parents, and anyone determined to improve the world around them. The hacker mindset is ultimately a mindset of responsibility. Instead of waiting for someone else to fix broken systems, hackers ask, "What can I do to improve this?" That question has transformed companies, communities, industries, and countless individual lives. Perhaps it can transform yours as well. When most people hear the word hacker, they imagine someone breaking into systems. After reading this book, we discover a completely different definition. A hacker is someone who refuses to accept unnecessary limitations. Someone who constantly learns. Someone who experiments fearlessly. Someone who improves systems instead of merely criticizing them. Someone who remains curious long after others become comfortable. The world doesn't change because people blindly follow existing rules. It changes because someone decides to ask a better question. The next great innovation may not come from a giant corporation. It may come from one curious individual willing to think differently. Perhaps that individual is you. Before we finish, let's remember the 5 most powerful lessons from hacking for success. First, question assumptions. Just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way. Second, action creates knowledge. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Experiment, learn, improve, and keep moving forward. Third, curiosity is your greatest asset. The people who continue asking questions continue discovering opportunities. Fourth, competence always outlasts credentials. Focus on becoming genuinely valuable instead of simply collecting titles. Finally, every problem hides an opportunity. The biggest breakthroughs often begin with someone asking one simple question: can this be done better? These principles don't just create better hackers. They create better thinkers, better leaders, better innovators, and ultimately, better problem solvers. If you enjoyed this complete summary of hacking for success, and you want more books about technology, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, innovation, business strategy, entrepreneurship, productivity, and personal growth, make sure you subscribe to Knowledge Power. Every week, we break down the world's most influential books into engaging, easy-to-understand summaries that help you learn faster, think smarter, and grow your career, without spending hours reading every page. If this video changed the way you think, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves technology or innovation, and leave a comment below telling us which book you'd like Knowledge Power to summarize next. And remember this final thought. The future won't belong to the people who know the most. It will belong to the people who never stop learning, never stop questioning, and never stop improving. Thank you for watching Knowledge Power. We'll see you in the next book summary.